Anyone who is considering moving to Alaska is immediately struck with one really important hurdle, and that is the cost of living here is higher than what you're going to find on the average across the entire lower 48, aka the rest of the United States. So why is that the case? You know, we can talk about the numbers and we can talk about how high they are, but why are they the way they are? And what are some things you can do that's going to actually counterbalance that? Well, we're going to be talking about that today. My name is Jamin. I'm a real estate broker in the state of Alaska, and my mission is to help you to build an intentional and significant legacy for yourself and your family by coaching you in real estate. And today we're going to be jumping into that video, but before we do, give this video a like, subscribe, and do all the good stuff that you need to do, and let's go ahead and get into it. The first thing that really does make Alaska so expensive to live up here is that it is physically isolated. If you look at it on a map, you will quickly appreciate just how isolated Alaska is from the rest of the lower 48, which obviously does isolate us more from the transportation and the lines of transport, at least with all the goods and services that kind of go back and forth. We're kind of at the far end of it, and that means transporting anything up here, any kind of goods, is going to require that much more time and effort. So just anything you see on the shelf has come further, and obviously it's going to cost more to do that, especially with the cost of gas having gone up so much. So that's really a big one right off the bat. Another big contributing factor is just that the infrastructure isn't as well developed up here in Alaska as what you would have in the lower 48. Now, we're still light years ahead of where we were 50, 70 years ago with having like railroads and like actual like full roads, like actual permanent roads instead of just these log roads that were put in on a temporary basis. So that is obviously a whole lot better than what we had before. Compared to the lower 48 and a state that you would see down there, we still don't really have as much infrastructure. And what that means is anytime there is any kind of road repair or anytime a road gets blocked for whatever reason, then that really constricts the amount of flow of the goods that we can have going through those areas. So the infrastructure is going to be not as well developed as what you would find with other states, and that ultimately means stuff coming up is going to be that much more slow to get here, which means it is going to be that much more expensive when it does. Another big one that a lot of people are aware of, especially homeowners, is the higher cost of utilities up here. Now, what makes the utilities more expensive is just the climate is just going to be more extreme up here than what you find in most of the lower 48. And if you live in somewhere like Wisconsin, Missouri, some of these other places, you know that the cost of utilities is going to be higher. In Alaska, it's going to be just not just the cold and all that. Yes, that's going to make it expensive, but also just the cost of like the gas and the fuel and everything, just because it does have a longer transportation route to get up here, is going to be more expensive as well. That being said though, during the summer months, you're hardly going to spend any money, at least on energy, just because it's summertime in Alaska. For the most part, it's going to be comparatively warm compared to what you were used to during the summertime. And also, you're going to have sunlight out all the time, which means that you're not going to have all the lights on in the house. So for that reason, yes, utilities are pretty expensive during the wintertime. During the summer months, it's not nearly as expensive. Now, the next one I'm going to give you is limited competition. And for those of you who are using the internet services up here, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Limited competition means that the prices that are set are just going to be much higher than they would be if there was competition out there and companies competing to get your business. If you only have one internet provider in an area, you run into scenarios where, well, like for me, where I'm paying about $140 a month for internet. So yes, you get less competition up here in some areas. I'm not going to say you have a monopoly, but there's hardly any competition out there for certain services. And anywhere where you have less competition, the prices are going to be going up. And yeah, just across the board, there's just less businesses overall here, which, I feel like overkilling the word here, but yes, there's less competition to drive down the prices at that point. And last but not least, cost of housing up here definitely does contribute to the overall cost of living as well. Cost of a home in Anchorage, for instance, just continues going up. Not really seeing this going down anytime soon. Not as long as the supply and demand remains at the same levels that they are. But what we're seeing is that the average sold price for a property in Anchorage is right around like that $460 or so. In the Matsu Valley, I believe it's actually closer to about $390, possibly $405 if I recall correctly. I'd have to go back and check it. But yes, the cost of homes in the municipality of Anchorage is going to be significantly more than the cost of homes over in the Matsu Valley. And for that reason, a lot of people will actually live in the Matsu Valley where the cost of a home is going to be significantly less, and they'll work over in Anchorage where the wages are going to be higher. And that's how a lot of people in this area, in the South Central area, and especially just Alaska in general, manage to make the cost of living a little bit more affordable. We're going to get to all the strategies in just a minute on how you can keep your cost of living lower in Alaska, but before we do, just wanted to remind everybody that I do have a relocation guide for those of you who are considering moving to Alaska. If that's something you're considering, definitely feel free to go to my website. Link for that is going to be in the description section down below on the website. Just make sure you type in relocation guide so I know what to send you. Now, let's go ahead and take a look and see what we can do to actually make Alaska more affordable. One of the big things you can do up front is just living more of a sustainable lifestyle. Now, when I say sustainable, I'm thinking more like energy efficiency, making sure that we're burning as little energy as possible, whether that be lighting, fuel, all that good stuff. Maybe use some alternative energy sources for your house if it pencils out. Just because it's going to be saving each month by getting these solar panels does not necessarily mean that it makes sense to go drop $10,000 on it if it means you're going to have those solar panels for 50 years in order to break even. So make sure it pencils out, but yes, be energy conscious and make sure that we're setting the thermostat, as low as you can go. Maybe during the nighttime, let it drop down even a little bit more. And when you're not there during the day, just set it to a different amount, not so drastically low that it's going to cost more money to actually heat it back up at the end of the day, but drop it down to a little bit lower, once you do step out of the house for the day though. Another big thing you can do to cut costs in Alaska is really focusing on trying to find most of your protein by going hunting and fishing. Now, I'm going to caveat right now and say, for the most part, you're probably not going to be making this a whole lot cheaper up front, just going and spending the time to do this stuff on your own if you're in it just really for the sport. If you are out there just fishing on the bang, that's all fine and good. You're going to have fun, enjoy yourself. It's not necessarily what you're going to be doing if you want to substantially change your entire budget around protein that you're trying to get for yourself. If you're trying to do that, you need to go dip netting. That's going to be really the best way for you to really kind of fill up your fridge very quickly. And if you're trying to go hunting, then by all means go get a moose or something like that. So just understand there's a different mindset behind it if you are trying to fill up the freezer in order to save some money on your grocery bill versus I'm just out here to have fun. If I catch something, then so what? And also make sure that you're actually pricing things out in such a way that it does make sense. If you have to spend $3,000 or whatever to go get one single moose and then you never go hunting ever again, when you never use all the gear and stuff a second time, then I think you should have just gone to the store and bought the stuff. All right, now this next thing is really going to resonate with those of you who are kind of on the Dave Ramsey plan, and that is create a budget for yourself that actually is realistic and then stick to that budget, okay? Know how much you spend. Have an idea for how much you anticipate spending up here based on what you can see on prices, which you can find out a lot more on the prices on stuff than you could in previous decades, so take advantage of that. And that's going to give you the ability to create kind of a realistic budget. But yes, create the budget and then stick to it as best as you possibly can. Remove any subscriptions to anything that you're not using. Okay, you'd be shocked to find out how many little $5, $10 a month subscriptions you're paying for that you're just not using anymore. Me personally, I've got one streaming platform that I use and I don't have any others. And it's for a couple reasons. Number one, the money. I don't want to spend more money on streaming services than I really need to. And secondly, and more importantly, I shudder to think that I would actually use enough time with 3 or 4 streaming services to justify having that many streaming services to begin with. So yeah, go through there, cut subscriptions, not just streaming, but just cut as many subscriptions as you possibly can, and you'd be surprised how much that frees up and starts giving you some margin. Now, I'm also going to encourage you, when possible, to shop local, go to some farmers markets, and see if you can find anything there that's going to be less expensive than what you're seeing over at the store. Obviously, it's not just about saving every penny at that point. It's also about supporting local and all that good stuff. But yeah, if at all possible, purchase something there. There's a good chance you find something that's less expensive than what you would see at the store because it didn't have to get shipped all the way up here. Those of you in the living off grid kind of vein of thought will really resonate with this one, and that is really focus on kind of growing your own vegetables, creating your own produce in your garden, and that is going to come back to really help you later on in the season. You'd be surprised how much produce you can grow with a fairly small amount of land and just kind of starting out and getting used to it. I have no clue what all goes into it, so right up front, but it can be done, and I'm sure there's plenty of people out there that can give you more information on how to do it effectively. Be very, very, very picky on where you live if the cost of living is something you're concerned about. Some areas are going to have higher cost of utilities. Some areas are going to cost more for you because you're not going to have to drive further. Other areas are going to be, the upfront expense of getting in is going to be higher, but the cost of maintenance and everything else is going to be much lower. The size of the yard might be a little bit different. So yeah, just understand where you live, and kind of the cost associated with living in that area might actually have an impact on kind of your monthly budget. All right, almost done here with tips, but another big thing I would say is make sure that you take a lot of vacations around the state, okay? So if you live in Alaska, especially during the summertime, you don't need to go have extravagant vacations because you live in the place where most people dream about coming here for vacation once in their entire lives. So take advantage, kind of travel around during the summertime, and really cut down on the amount that you spend on vacations by being able to do that. And obviously you can go out of the state, and especially during the winter months. But if we're trying to cut costs, then that's one of the big ways I would do it. Cut that winter vacation and focus more on just taking like these small camping vacations really around the state during the summertime. Last but not least, consider doing some more alternative transportation options when you're looking at getting from point A to point B here, like carpooling, biking. You might be able to run or walk to wherever you're going to, just depending on the time of year and how far it is. So really kind of look into these things. I know carpooling isn't particularly popular here in Alaska. If you can make it work, like that's great. One thing you might really consider doing is going and getting a Prius. I know I got one just a couple months ago, and I know they're not really what people think about when they think about Alaskan vehicles, but let me tell you, nearly 60 miles to the gallon is really going a long way, so I do recommend that. So this has been your video talking about why Alaska is so expensive, and also some things you can do to actually cut down on that expense. I sure hope it's been useful. If it has, give this video a like, subscribe, and we'll see you next time.